What is up, guys? This will be my how to play the Shadowcat hero in Marvel Champions, and in this video I'll be going through some examples of how defending works with the Shadowcat hero. And yeah, I did the first how to play video on Nick Fury, one of the new heroes in the Marvel Champions Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. expansion, and I asked you guys which hero you guys want to see next, and a lot of you guys, probably the majority of you guys, requested I do Shadowcat here. I don't think she's the most complicated hero, but defending is pretty complicated in Marvel Champions, so yeah, we'll go through how her kit works right here. So Kitty Pryde right here, as her setup, you put your mass form upgrade into place, solid side face up. So in her identity specific kit, she has this mass form upgrade right here, the solid form, and the phase form is on the flip side. So this is a permanent upgrade, so it's going to stay in play. It can never get discarded. There's two effects on both sides. So on the solid side, it says hero resource, you can exhaust this card to generate a physical resource for an attack or defense event. As a response, after you attack or defend in solid mass form, you flip this card over. That is a response here. So it's not a forced response. So we do not have to do this if we attack or defend. We can choose whether or not we want to do that if we're in a solid mass form and you attack or defend. If you're in your phase mass form over here, it says while Shadowcat is defending, she cannot take damage. So as long as you're in your phase form here and you're defending with Shadowcat, you cannot take damage. But as a forced response, so that means we have to trigger it. After you attack or defend in phase mass form, you flip this card over. So this one gives it a little bit less versatility because you have to do that. But it's really good to be in this form because when you're defending, you can't take damage, right? So when you're playing Kitty Pryde, you want to be in your phase form because you can't take damage in this form. But it's hard to stay in this form because after you attack or defend, you have to flip back over. And it is really easy to stay in solid form because you never have to flip over to your phase form because it's not a forced response here. Her obligation will flip her, but that doesn't really matter right now for what we're talking about. But yeah, you don't have to do anything with her solid mass form here, right? That's the R2 action. If you want, you can trigger phase control. So flip your mass form upgrade limit once per round. So if you want and you're in solid mass form, you can flip over to your phase form here and vice versa if you're in your Arch Eagle. Okay, so let's go through defending here with Shadowcat. Okay, so let's say the villain Magneto is attacking Shadowcat right here, right? So in order to defend, she has to actually exhaust, use her base defense, or play a defense event like the quick shift here, which is a hero interrupt defense. So this counts as defend because it has a defense keyword, right? So let's just say, for example, if Magneto is attacking Shadowcat and he gets his face on boost card, then we choose what we want to do. Let's say we don't do anything, right? So we take the boost card, which is going to be, 3 boost icons plus 3 attacks. So it's going to do 6 damage to Shadowcat. Well, we are not defending here in our phase form, right? So it says while Shadowcat's defending, we can't take damage. Since we are not defending, we can take damage, and Magneto will actually deal the full-on 6 damage to Shadowcat. And since we only have 9 life, that's going to be pretty rough, and we're going to be near death here, right? So if we don't actually do anything to proc defending, then we can't actually take damage in phase form. And as a force response, after you attack or defend in phase mass form, flip this card over. Well, we did not attack or defend, so we actually stay in our phase mass form here, which sometimes can be good if like minions are attacking you, but not in this case where Magneto's attacking us, right? So let's run this back over here, and let's go through Shadowcat's basically her best defense event and the only defense event in her identity specific kit, which is the quick shift here. So this is a 0 cost event. Here, interrupt defense. When an enemy attacks, if you're in solid mass form, change the phase mass form. If you're in your phase mass form, draw 2 cards. Okay, so let's run through how this works right here. So let's say it's the villain phase right now, and Magneto is about to attack Shadowcat. Okay, so we have to defend to trigger phase. So let's say we play quick shift, it's a 0 cost event. When an enemy attacks, if you are in solid mass form, change the phase mass form. If you're in phase, we draw 2 cards. So this is an interrupt. So before the attack actually goes through, and the time condition is when enemy attacks, right? So we are in phase mass form. So we trigger the second option here where we can draw 2 cards. So let's say we have like 2 cards here in our deck, and then we like draw 2 cards, right? So we choose 2 cards, which is really nice. And we are now defending with that defense keyword without exhausting. So we have the quick shift right here. And then Magneto will get his face on boost card, and he's going to review the boost, which is a boost of 3. So it's going to do 3 plus 3, 6 damage on Shadowcat. He's going to do 6 damage to Shadowcat. But since we are defending with the quick shift with that defense keyword, we cannot take damage here because we are defending, and we do not have to exhaust. So even though Magneto dealt 6 damage to Shadowcat, we take none of that damage, right? So that is a like great bonus here of quick shift if you're playing it in your phase form, so you can draw 2 cards and really get a boost to your hand size there, right? But now as a force response, after you attack or defend in phase mass form, you must flip this card over. So after the attack is fully resolved, you flip this over to a solid mass form. One thing to note is that even though the quick shift here is an interrupt for the defense keyword, you have not fully defended the attack, right? You only start defending. It says after you attack or defend, right? Not before. If this says like an interrupt or something like that, then it might flip you, before. But since it's a forced response, it happens after the whole attack goes through. Manuel's attack goes through on Shadowcat, and then she can fully defend the attack, and then as a response, flip this back over to a solid mass form here. So let's say, for example, let's run this back, And let's just say, for example, we don't want to play the quick shift. So if Magneto is attacking Shadowcat here, right? So he gets a face down boost card, and we choose what we want to do. Let's say we exhaust to defend, right? Since we are exhausting to use our basic defense stat, that does count as us defending here with Shadowcat, so we can't take damage. We review the boost, it's going to be 3 plus 3, so it's going to be a total of 6 damage on Shadowcat, dealt to Shadowcat. She's going to reduce it by 2 with her defense stat, so it's only going to be 4 damage dealt to Shadowcat, and then we take none damage because we're in interface form, and after that happens, we're going to flip this over as a force response over to our solid mass form right over here. Then let's run this back again, and let's say, for example, you are in your solid mass form whenever Magneto is attacking now. So let's say Magneto is about to attack Shadowcat. We play quick shift, zero cost event. When an enemy attacks, if you're in your solid mass form, which we are, and this does have a defense keyword, right? But we are just starting to defend here. So if you're in solid mass form, change the phase mass form. So as a hero interrupt, this happens before the attack goes through. We flip over to your phase mass form right here, right? Then Magneto will get dealt his face down boost card, and he's going to reveal it now, which is 3 plus 3, so 6 damage going on Shadowcat here. But since we are defending here and we're in the phase form, we actually take no damage from that attack. And after the attack resolves, we'll flip over to your solid mass form here, right? So that is why quick shift is so powerful, because whether you're in solid mass form or phase mass form, you get a huge benefit, right? If you're in solid mass form, it can protect you, flipping you over to your phase mass form. If you're in your phase mass form, you can draw 2 cards, which is just really nice for greedy players like me that want to draw a bunch of cards. Let's also run this back a little bit, and I want to go through the taking and dealing damage here, which can be a little bit confusing in defending. So let's say if you have the Power Stone module set, with the scenario, or if you're facing Rowan the Accuser, where the Power Stone is required. So as a force response for this attachment right here, after a hero or villain deals 3 or more damage to attached character with a single attack, attach the Power Stone to the attacking hero or villain. So let's say Shadowcat has a Power Stone right here, so she has 3 thwart and 3 attack. And then let's say Magneto attacks Shadowcat, and we are in our phase form here. And then let's say we play a quick shift here, right? So when enemy attacks, if you're in phase form, we draw 2 cards. So let's say we draw 2 cards here from our deck, and then we are defending with that defense keyword. Then Magneto gets dealt his face on boost card, and he reviews a boost, which is 3, so it's going to do 6 damage over to Shadowcat, right? So with the official ruling from the Power Stone, after hero villain deals 3 or more damage, he's going to do 6 damage. So he actually deals more than 3. He will take the Power Stone away from Shadowcat here, right? So Magneto actually gets a Power Stone with that activation. And then we take no damage because we're in a phase mass form, but that doesn't matter because 6 damage was still dealt. So we take no damage, and we have to flip over to our solid mass form as a force response there, and that will resolve the quick shift. So one thing to keep in mind, and I had to learn this whenever I was playing Ronin with Shadowcat as well, was that the Power Stone will constantly transfer if you are constantly using the effect of phase mass form to not take damage while you're defending, because even though you're not taking damage, damage is always being dealt from the villain, as long as you are letting damage go through, right? So one way to prevent damage dealt is actually with your defense stat. So let's go through that example one more time and actually go through this really quick. So we're going to go through another defense event here, and let's say we have the desperate defense right here, right? So in our hand. So let's say Magneto attacks us here, right? So for this one, the time condition is when your hero defends against attacks. So we don't play this before the boost is dealt. The boost card is actually dealt first here. So we actually have to defend to trigger the condition to play it just for defense. So that can be through playing a quick shift, because this is a defense event. So you play this card, you can now play just for defense because you are officially defending against an attack. But that kind of negates itself, right? So let's exhaust Shadowcat here. So we're defending for 2. And let's say we pitch a resource here from our hand, so we can play a desperate defense for 1 cost, right? So when you hear defense against an attack, we're defending right now. We get +2 for that attack, so we're now defending for 4 instead of just 2. If you take no damage from that attack, you can ready over here. So let's say we play the desperate defense right here, and now we're defending for 4. Now Magneto will reveal his boost card, which is 3 plus 3, so 6 damage going on Shadowcat. But our defense stat is now 4, and we actually reduce that damage dealt, because the defense stat, if you're using the defense stat, it reduces the damage dealt. So Magneto will only actually deal 2 damage over to Shadowcat now. He does not take the Power Stone because a hero or villain did not deal 3 more damage. He only dealt 2 damage to Shadowcat thanks to desperate defense and our basic defense stat. We did not take damage from that attack, so you can ready up your hero. And then also after defense goes through, or we didn't take damage because while Shadowcat is defending, we cannot take damage. So even though the 2 damage was dealt, we don't take it because we're in phase form. And after that attack goes through, we didn't take damage, we ready up with just defense, and we flip this back over to our solid mass form there. So yeah, that was a little bit complicated. I hope that made sense. If you guys have any questions about that, definitely let me know down in the comments. But if you were to do that, you would keep the Power Stone with Shadowcat, and then you would end in a solid mass form after we fully defend against the attack and take no damage. And one really cool thing with Shadowcat is that since she's constantly not taking damage from attacks, she can very easily trigger the perfect defense engine. So a card like Unflappable right here, it's a 1-cost upgrade, so it just stays in play. As a response, after you defend against an attack, take no damage, you can exhaust Unflappable, draw a card. Same with the Hard to Ignore. After your hero defends against an attack, takes no damage, you can exhaust this card and remove one threat from the main scheme. So Shadowcat, as long as she's in her phase mass form and she is either basically defending or playing defense events, she can trigger these perfect defense engine effects every single turn and get some powerful effects off. So that's kind of the main thing that people like to do whenever they're playing Shadowcat, and I think it works decently well with her if you're facing a villain that does not attack multiple times, right? If the villain keeps on getting several attack activations, then it would be kind of rough for her to not take damage for every single attack, unless you can constantly stay in phase form by flipping back over to her phase form here. So speaking of flipping over to her phase form, let's go through one of the best defense events for her, which is the powerful punch here. It is also one of the more complicated defense events for Shadowcat. Okay, so let's run this if we're in our Solid Mass form here, right? So let's say you have this card in your hand, and Magneto's attacking, and you're starting off in your Solid Mass form. So whenever Magneto attacks you, the condition for this is when an enemy initiates attacks, so that's going to be before the boost card is dealt. So Magneto is attacking Shadowcat right now. So we can play this card for 2 resources. So let's say Magneto's attacking, we use 2 resources right here from our hand, so we can play a powerful punch from our hand. So it says here, interrupt, attack, defense. When an enemy initiates an attack against you, do 4 damage to enemy. This has the attack keyword and the defense keyword. So it's interrupt, so it happens before Magneto's attack. So we're actually going to do 4 damage to Magneto right now. Then that attack will fully resolve here, right? So with our Solid Mass form right here, it says after you attack or defend in Solid Mass form, you can flip this card over as a response. We're going to go ahead and flip the Solid Mass form over here to the phase form, and this will happen, right after our attack. But we're also defending right now in our phase form because this has a defense keyword. So Magneto's attack will go through now, so he will deal his face down boost card. We're not going to exhaust to defend. He's same with a base of 3, gets a boost of 3, so he's going to deal 6 damage here to Shadowcat. But we are defending because of that defense keyword from Powerful Punch, proccing that without exhausting. And then while Shadowcat is defending, we cannot take damage, so we don't take any of that 6 damage. And after that resolves, as a full response, after you defend or attack in phase form, we must flip this card back over to our Solid Mass form, right? So we will end up in our Solid Mass form. Even though we started in Solid Mass form, we dealt 4 damage to Magneto, but we also took no damage, and we are not exhausted as well. So that's why Powerful Punch is really, really good with Shadowcat if you're in your Solid Mass form, and because it can easily flip you over to your phase mass form for you to not take damage for that attack. So let's run the same sequence over if we are in our phase mass form. So if you are already in your phase mass form whenever Magneto attacks you, Powerful Punch is a card that you probably do not want to play. So let's say, for example, we do play, right? I'll show you guys what would happen. So if you're in your phase form here, Magneto attacks Shadowcat right here, right? So when enemy initiates an attack, we're going to spend 2 resources here so we can play the Powerful Punch from our hand. Do 4 damage to the enemy. So we're going to do 4 damage to Magneto right here, and that will resolve the attack. So as a full response, after you attack or defend, we just attacked, we must flip this card over to our Solid Mass form here. But we're not fully defend yet because Magneto didn't attack us, right? The defense fully resolves after Magneto gets his attack through on Shadowcat, which he did not do yet, right? So we are now in our Solid Mass form, but we are defending with that defense keyword. And then Magneto will get his phase down boost card, and let's say we reveal it, which is 3. So it's going to be 6 damage on Shadowcat. Well, in this case, because we are in our Solid Mass form, even though we are defending with that defense keyword, we can take damage in this form. So we're just going to take the 6 damage here to the face, and yeah, that is going to hurt. So we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to play a Power Punch if we're starting off in our phase mass form, because as a force response, it has to flip us back over to a solid form here where we would take damage, right? So it's very important when you're playing Shadowcat that we save on to Power Punches if you're stuck in your solid mass form to flip us over to phase. But if you are in phase, you don't want to play this because it will flip you over to solid where you would take damage from the attack. So let's reset this, and we're going to go through what I think is one of the best defense events in the game. It works a little bit weird with Shadowcat, but it's still pretty good with her. So one of my favorite defense events is Defiance here, which is a 0-cost defense event, right? Here, interrupt defense. When a boost card on an enemy attacking you will be turned face up, discard it instead. Okay, so let's say, for example, Manu is attacking Shadowcat, and then he gets dealt his face on boost card right here, right? And let's say we play the Defiance, so it has a defense keyword. We discard this boost card instead of turning it face up. Then we are now defending here as interrupt. But since the defense did not fully resolve, we cannot trigger this response here after you attack or defend solid mass flip this card over, because it says after, right? This one is not interrupt, even though this is interrupt. So currently we are defending against Magneto, but we cannot flip our solid mass form over until after attack. So Magneto is going to be hitting us for just 3 damage. Sorry, we already got the boost, which we discarded. So we take 3 damage on Shadowcat. And now Defiance will resolve. The defense will resolve as well. We can flip over to our phase mass form, but we will take that 3 damage. So Defiance cannot flip us from solid or to phase before the attack. It will flip us after the attack, after the damage already goes through. So let's say, for example, if you're in your phase mass form here. So why do you want to play Defiance? Well, Defiance is a great way for Shadowcat to defend without exhausting, essentially, right? So let's say Magneto attacks Shadowcat here, and you have the Defiance in your hand. He gets dealt his face on boost card, and then we play Defiance. So when a boost card is turned face up, we discard instead. And as interrupt, this has defense keyword, so we are now currently defending for this attack. So Magneto is going to do 3 damage on Shadowcat. We cannot take damage because we're in our phase form, so we don't take any of the damage. And then after the attack resolves, we flip over to our solid mass form as a force response. So now we took the damage from attack, and then Shadowcat is still readied up, and we can still use our basic activation during the player phase to either thwart or attack or like do whatever we want to do, right? So that's one really cool thing about the Defiance is that if you play this because it's interrupt, it counts you defending, and you can officially defend without exhausting yourself. Otherwise, you have to exhaust yourself to defend the attack, and then you can't use your basic thwart or your attack stat during the player phase. So that's kind of what Defiance does. Let's go through really quick the form here. So we have this card right here that I've actually never played, so it's not sleeved up. Surprise Attack. It's a 1-cost event. Hero response attack. After you change form, do 3 damage to enemy, 4 damage instead if you pay for this card using a physical resource, right? So the way that Shadowcat works is that if this flips over to phase form or vice versa, it does count as changing forms because this is her mass form upgrade. So you can actually trigger the changing form requirement for a card like the Surprise Attack. So let's say she's in her phase mass form right here, right? Magneto attacks us, so he gets a boost card. And let's say we defend this attack. So Magneto's hitting with a base of 3. He gets his boost card of 3, 6 damage on Shadowcat. He's going to deal 4, but we take no damage with the phase, and then we flip over to our solid mass form here, right? So now we just changed forms. So the time window is perfect for surprise attack. So if you have this card in your hand now, after you change form, we just changed forms, we can do 3 damage to enemy if we pay for this card. So we can actually right now exhaust the solid form right here for the hero resource here. Exhaust this card, generate a physical resource for an attack or defense event. Exhausting it, this is an attack event with the attack keyword right there and right there. So we can generate a physical resource for a surprise attack and play it. It says you pay for this with a physical resource, we can actually do 4 damage to an enemy. So we're going to do 4 damage to Magneto right after we flip over with our base form to our solid mass form. And then after you play this attack here, if you want, you can actually flip back over, right? Because it says here response after you attack or defend solid mass form, flip this card over. So you can flip back over to your phase form. So if Magneto gets this attack activation again, you're now in your phase form. So he gets a phase down boost card here. But since we're not defending, we will take damage. But if you can play like a Defiance or something like that in your hand to trigger the defense keyword, then you can just discard the boost. It counts as you defending, and then Magneto would do no, or Shadowcat would take no damage from attack because she is defending in her phase form. So yeah, Shadowcat has some cool synergies in aggression because of the card like Surprise Attack, because it can trigger her form upgrade to help her get back over to her phase form to defend again for another enemy attack. Another thing to keep in mind with how the phase form works here is that exhausting this card for the physical resource is different than flipping over, right? So even if this card is exhausted, you can still use the effect of phase form, same with the effect of the solid mass form, right? You just can't exhaust it for that hero resource to spend a physical resource or to generate a physical resource for an attack or defense event, right? Being exhausted and being readied up has no effect on, when Shadowcat is defending, she cannot do damage. That's a constant effect if she's in her phase mass form, even if this card is exhausted. Okay, and then let's run through the final thing, which is my favorite way to play Shadowcat and where I think that she's the strongest in. And I actually think Shadowcat is the best whenever you get a bunch of readies with her, right? So that's kind of why in her kit, she has 3 copies of the Shadowcat Surprise. This is one of the best cards for Shadowcat. So it's a hero action attack, do 3 damage to enemy, and then ready up your hero. Okay, that is really powerful because not only does a solid mass form pay for it, but it is an attack. So after you attack or defend in solid mass form, you can flip this card over. One scary thing about Shadowcat is that if you're in your phase mass form, and let's say you only have 1 attack or defense or like ready in your kit or something like that, let's just say you play the Shadowcat Surprise and you do 3 damage to enemy, well, it will force you to flip over to your solid mass form. So what are you going to do then to flip back over to your phase mass form? Well, you could just exhaust to swing for 2, and then that counts as attacking, so then you can flip back over to your phase mass form. You want to end your most of your hero turns in the phase mass form if you plan on having Shadowcat defend, and she gets a lot of value from doing that, and all of her cards in her kit revolve around that. So I highly recommend trying to end your turn in your phase mass form. So the sequencing can get a little bit difficult with Shadowcat because you want to be able to end that way, right? So let's say, for example, you want Shadowcat to thwart. So if you thwart for her, she stays in her phase mass form here. Then you can play Shadowcat Surprise, right? Do 3 damage to an enemy and ready up your hero. So you do 3 damage to Magneto, you ready up your hero, and then after we attack, we have to flip over to a solid mass form. Well, now you're in your solid mass form here. If you want to end in phase form, you cannot thwart again with Shadowcat. You have to use your bits attack activation if you have nothing else in your hand to trigger the solid mass form here, right? So if you thwart again and you end your turn, you're ready back up, and then you'll be in the solid mass form. You have to attack Magneto. Let's say you do 2 damage, and then you can trigger a response here to flip back over to your phase mass form. So depending on what cards you have in your hand, just playing your turns out well so that you're able to end in the phase mass form. And it's a little bit weird sometimes because her resource generator right here for her solid mass form, you can only use it in a solid mass form. So if you want to exhaust this card generator if it's resource for an attack event like Shadowcat Surprise, you have to be in a solid mass form to do that. So oftentimes, let's say I'm exhausted here with Shadowcat. Let's say I exhaust it to like thwart from like the main scheme or side scheme, and I can exhaust this card generate physical resource. Let's say I use another resource here from my hand to play Shadowcat Surprise. So do 3 damage to enemy and ready up your hero. So I'm gonna ready up, do 3 damage to Magneto. Now, whenever this card is resolving, it's after I attack. It depends. Do I need to thwart more or do I plan on attacking, right? If I plan on still attacking with Shadowcat, I'm not going to trigger this response here because it's not forced in her solid mass form to flip over, right? Because then, after this resolves, I can attack for 2, flip over to phase, and end my turn there, ready back up, and be in my phase form for the villain phase. But if I plan on thwarting, then after I play a Shadowcat Surprise and this is an attack, I will trigger the response here. So I can flip back over to the phase form, and then when I get the ready from Shadowcat Surprise, I'll exhaust the thwart, from the side scheme or the main scheme, and that will keep me in my phase form here, right? So depending on Shadowcat really wants you to plan a few steps ahead and know, are you going to use her basic attack or thwart activation? Because if you're thwarting, you don't flip. If you're attacking, you must flip if you're phased, and you may flip if you're in your solid mass form right here. And then, yeah, my favorite thing, I think the strongest way that Shadowcat plays is definitely with Utopia. So as a response for Utopia, after an X-Men ally enters play, exhaust Utopia to ready up an X-Men character. So you can give Shadowcat more readies. So you play like an X-Men ally, like let's say Professor X, for example. You can exhaust the Utopia to ready up Shadowcat. And Shadowcat definitely wants all the readies that she can get, because the more readies that Shadowcat has, is the more flexible that she can play, right? Because having a bunch of readies means that you can thwart or attack and ready back up and do more things to finally flip over to your phase mass form if you want to, right? So if let's say you have 3 ways to ready in your kit, right? That means that you could just attack, flip over to phase, or let's start the turn out right here, right? So let's say you have 3 ways to, let's say you only have 1 way to ready during your turn, right? For example. So if you're in your phase form here and you only have 1 way to ready, well, if Shadowcat swings for 2, it forces you to flip over here, and you can ready up 1 more time, but you can't thwart. You have to swing again if you want to flip the solid mass form back over, right? So now you're forced to attack to flip this card, back over to the phase form. If you have multiple readies and you start in your phase form, for example, you can like attack or like do whatever you want, flip over to a solid mass form. Let's say you exhaust your tropes to ready back up, then you can choose a thwart, then you can ready back up, and you can attack at the very last step to flip back over to your phase mass form right here, right? So just having a bunch of readies is really powerful with Shadowcat, but that's also why Shadowcat Surprise is such a great card in your kit, because not only is it an attack event dealing 3 damage to enemy, but it also readies up your hero. Just be a little bit careful when you're playing this card, because it can get complicated, and I definitely get really confused whenever I'm sequencing for this card here, because it attacks, so I have to trigger the phase form here, but then I also get it ready. So then if I'm planning to use my thwart activation, I don't want to do that if it's my last activation, because I want to flip this back over to phase. So oftentimes I'm locked to having Shadowcat actually just swing for 2 to flip this back over to phase whenever I'm ending my turn and I go back over to villain phase. Yeah, so that's how Shadowcat works here. I hope that wasn't too confusing. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have any questions. I hope that this video was helpful to everyone that wanted questions for how to play Shadowcat. I feel like she's been out for a while now, so I think everyone has like a good understanding of her kit and how she works. But if you have any questions, definitely let me know, and I hope that this video was helpful.